With the BBC, we're working on two big bits of innovation. One of those is an interactive feed of Wimbledon. That will be enhanced with data that you can manipulate, and you can do it whilst watching the broadcast and as part of the broadcast. We've got our experience in Roblox, which we're building on. This is the first year that we've done integration into other Roblox experiences as well. We always think of at Wimbledon is that innovation needs to be thoughtful and meaningful. It's not just about doing it for the sake of doing it or because you've got some cool technology that you could roll out. It has to really mean something to the people who are engaging with it, and it has to deepen our relationship to them.
All right, hi everyone, welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Joe Condon. I'm joined again by Jay Stewart, and today we have Chris Clements from Wimbledon. Chris, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. As
of recording, we're only a few weeks out from the championship, so even more stressful than usual, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, right? It's like, it's stressful, it's exciting. Yeah, it is a little bit nerve wracking. Like, it's always a relief on day one when the gates open and you can see the first ticket getting scanned and it works successfully, and you can see the first scores coming through on the app and it's loading properly. Like, obviously, we test to the nth degree, but until you see it in person, it's always a little bit nerve wracking. But it's also so exciting. Like, we've been working so hard for the last year, some things we've been working on for more than a year, and to be able to actually see them out there and see how people respond to it, it's so exciting.
Just a few as soon as that first person's in, right? I mean, we only do events for a few hundred people, and we were just saying off camera that you're expecting 500,000 or so to come in across the championship.
Yeah, so generally, we get kind of well over 500,000 people that come in over the 14 days, and obviously it starts before that. It starts with qualifying just down the road from where we are today in Roehampton the week before, so that adds a few more numbers as well, and it's phenomenal, and it's phenomenal to see people coming from all around the world, all walks of life, coming in to enjoy like an amazing Wimbledon experience.
So we'll touch on Wimbledon, and there's a ton of stuff that you guys have been doing over the last couple of years, and I guess what you've got coming up for this championship too. But I'd love to talk about you to begin with, and I guess your journey to getting to Wimbledon as well.
Yeah, so it was a weaving path, I'd say that. So I did a few stints in a few different industries, almost got caught up in student politics and ended up going into politics. Decided that was a very bad idea. Did some time in banking, then worked for a university before I moved over to the LTA, so Lawn Tennis Association, who basically are responsible for everything to do with tennis in the UK that's not Wimbledon. Mm-hmm. So I spent 3 years working there, and then opportunity came up to move across to Wimbledon, and it's such a unique place and a unique thing to be part of. You can't really say no when Wimbledon comes knocking.
You've basically completed grassroots or kind of professional tennis now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you saw me on court, you would say different.
I got told I had a backhand to Mars when I was not my sport. But I guess it's a couple of weeks away. Maybe we can start with your role as well, so kind of digital products, and I guess what that means or kind of represents at Wimbledon, because it's a big term, it covers a lot. I don't know how you sleep. But I would love to look at, I guess, what that role entails at Wimbledon.
Yeah, so kind of digital products and strategy. So mostly what that entails is looking after a lot of our key one-to-one touch points with different people around the world. So our website, our mobile apps, all of our kind of outbound communications, kind of marketing communications, as well as a few other things, fun things thrown in on top of that, like gaming and our various different gaming initiatives.
Really cool. So I guess, you've just talked through some of the things that you own as well, but you also work with a plethora of partners. So, you've got your broadcast partners, you've got technology partners. I guess for you guys, like, what's shifted, I guess, for a lot of fans over the last, couple of years? So, you've worked with the BBC for... Do we know the number?
It's almost 100 years. Yeah, wow. Almost 100 years. I think it's the oldest broadcasting partnership in sport, I think.
I'd believe it. Yeah. So I guess like that has evolved so much, of course, over 100 years. But I guess a lot over the last few years as well. And I guess, there's such a broad audience that engages with Wimbledon across from attending, but also watching online and so on and so forth. So I guess from that experience perspective, how has that changed, or what are you finding that Wimbledon has to do to be able to engage with those different audiences, and I guess give them the type of championship that they want to see and to attend?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I think actually the way that the overall media landscape has changed has created so many amazing opportunities for us. If you think back 30 years, essentially in the UK, pretty much, maybe slightly more than 30 years, you had effectively one touch point, right? And that was broadcast. Yeah. So you had only one way of being able to communicate your brand and what the whole event is about to the whole country. And that's an extremely diverse country, right? Like, you're talking about all manner of different people, different walks of life. Now, obviously, that's changed, and we've got a lot more direct ways to talk to people, either through our own platforms or through operated platforms, that allows us to be able to make sure that we can bring that kind of magic of Wimbledon to people in a way which is really relevant to them. And that's just in the UK, but obviously, we are a global brand. I think it's over 700 million, almost 750 million people engage with Wimbledon in some way, shape or form. Wow. During the championships and the window around it. That is an extraordinary number. So we have to rely on some of those local experts, some of the market experts, to make sure that they are delivering the core essence of Wimbledon, but they're delivering it in a way which is relevant to those audiences wherever they are around the world and however they're engaging. And you do have to lean on that. And we've got amazing broadcast partnerships. You've mentioned the BBC, ESPN in the US, various others all around the world that are long-standing partnerships. Well, we don't tend to do short-term at Wimbledon. We like to make sure that we've built that trust, that people understand what Wimbledon is all about, and that then allows us to be able to bring that to people in a really authentic way that's also relevant to them. So and that's just mentioning our broadcast partnerships before we get into our commercial partnerships, which also have phenomenal impact. You think about the value that a commercial partner can bring in being able to weave Wimbledon into some of their core campaigns, and the extra visibility you get out of that as well. Yeah, it's phenomenal, the reach they give us, and that just wouldn't be possible if it was just us trying to do it on our own. So
everyone knows the Wimbledon brand. It's the heritage around it, and I guess some of the the ways that people like to engage with it, the strawberries and cream, the whatever else, right? So I guess there's an element of needing to protect that side of the brand, but also being able to drive it forwards and try new things. And I guess that comes with working with some of those commercial partners as well. And I guess one of the long-standing partners that you've had is IBM as well. Do we know how many years that one is too?
I think 1990. I think so. Yeah. So yeah, you're looking at 35 years of partnership, still going strong.
Yeah. So I guess that they've been ingrained in kind of helping you to drive that kind of technological innovation for a really long time. I guess I would love to dive into. We've just talked around like how the audience is changing, what their expectations are. And I guess from a Wimbledon perspective, that means trying, building new products, launching new things, trying new mediums, let's say. So how important has it been to have IBM supporting you on that journey? But then also, I guess, looking at like what that journey has been, over the last 5 years or so. And I guess, what's potentially coming next too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said before, having those long-term partnerships is amazing because it also builds a level of trust to be able to push and challenge each other, which I think is actually extremely important in any genuine partnership. And that's something that we have with IBM, which is amazing. And I don't think there's very many sports kind of commercial partnerships that have the ability to do that. And it is a genuine partnership. Like, they are actually embedded in everything that we do. You speak to a lot of other kind of sports organizations and they're amazed when we talk to them about what IBM actually do for us, because they are working with us on the design of our new website and app. They are delivering our products day to day, and we are genuinely working with them in terms of that innovation. I think one of the elements that's made that partnership really successful is that we do find the time to talk about innovation. So our digital products, website and app, they don't just serve fans around the world or on site. They're also the main touch point, or the first kind of touch point for a lot of other groups as well. So you look at our players, actually, they're using the app and website to be able to access their kind of key services, whether that's checking their food and drink allowance or or booking transport to come to the club. You've got media that are accessing services, key information that are coming through that. Our members, we are a members club. We run year round as a members club, and they can do various things like booking courts all through that kind of central touch point as that first point. So with that, you have to make sure that you proactively find the space to make sure that you're innovating and that you're staying ahead of it, because obviously all of those groups, and indeed for fans around the world, there are so many different things that we could be doing. So we have effectively an innovation program with IBM that's been in operation for a long time now, certainly before I started Wimbledon, which looks at the latest technologies, it looks at the emerging trends we're seeing in how people are engaging, and then it looks to bring forward innovative features and functionality that are going to meet those needs. And having that space to do that is something that very, very few people have the ability to be able to really kind of take that step back and think about those things. Now, if you look at what that's meant over the last few years, you look back, a lot of people started talking about AI about 4 years ago. The reality is that we've been working with IBM on AI initiatives for far, far longer than that. We were using AI in our automated highlights workflows almost a decade ago now. We've been doing things like our likelihood to win predictor to kind of make sure that people are understanding the context of a match for a really long time. And then, we've then progressively moved that into more kind of generative AI use cases as well. So last year we launched Match Chat, which was our, you kind of got to say award-winning interactive in-match and post-match assistant. So basically that allows someone to go in during a match and be able to ask any question about the match and how it's playing out. And then we also launched our live likelihood to win as well. And we're building on both of those features for this year to make them more interactive, to make them more engaging. They both got phenomenal results last year. And I think one of the big things when it comes to innovation that we always think of at Wimbledon is that innovation needs to be thoughtful and meaningful. Right? It's not just about doing it for the sake of doing it or because you've got some cool technology that you could roll out. It has to really mean something to the people who are engaging with it, and it has to deepen our relationship to them. We saw really great results off those two features. So actually we're working on building on those for this year. So for instance, in the live likely to win, there'll be key moments. So you can see highlighted if you come to a match late. As much as everyone would love to just spend the full 2 weeks trying to follow all of the action across all 18 courts, it's not possible for everyone. If you come to a match late, you don't know what's happening, you can go straight in and see the live likely to win, see how the match has played out, see what the key moments have been, and get up to speed really, really quickly on that. So that's a really, really exciting innovation. And that all forms part of our new kind of website and app. So we've redesigned our website and app for this year, new foundations that we've built it on. I think a lot of times, there's a tendency for people to just want to talk about the shiny new stuff, but actually there's a lot of kind of work that's gone into the overall architecture that sits behind that, which we think is really going to power our experiences for the next 5-10 years to be allowed to be able to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve. So we've done a massive amount of work on the underlying infrastructure for this year, including redesigning the front end. So what you'll see will look and feel different. But equally, and perhaps more importantly, it's going to be powered by that architecture, which is going to enable us to deliver amazing experiences that will remain at the forefront for the next, like I said, 5-10 years.
One of the advantages of having this embedded long-term partner, and you anticipated my question just with what you were saying, is that you have a partner who is helping you think about innovation so that it's not just grabbing at the latest thing or something that you're being sold or something that looks as if, we could do this, which is what often happens. A sport has someone come to them and say, you should do this. Whereas you can move at a pace that actually makes sense for you and makes sense for the technology, so that you're not, in some cases, overreaching. You're not doing things that are going to potentially not work. You're doing things that are adding value at a real pace that is aligned with what's happening in technology.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, sometimes that does mean we move first. Sometimes, but sometimes that's not the right thing to do. So, you look at Match Chat, like that was the first of its kind. But obviously it's kind of tried and tested technology elsewhere that we could have faith in, that we'd reached the point at which we could roll it out and that we would be able to trust that it's going to work effectively and it's going to genuinely deliver value. So, I think a lot of people, when they talk about innovation, they think that means that you need to be the very, very first to do something. Sometimes, yes, that is the case. Other times it's not, because ultimately, the best innovations tend to come when you're pulling together, kind of fragmented ideas, different technologies, all of those things, and you're pulling them together into a new product, which actually is really amazing and really useful to people and that they really want to use. And so it's always about finding that right blend. Yes, making sure that we're at or kind of, at the curve of adoption, probably, rather than at the curve of the technology, to make sure that we're doing stuff that ultimately fans are ready for, that are not necessarily just the tech sector who are coming to you and trying to pitch their technology because they've been working on it and they're really, really proud of it. They want to roll out, but actually it's what people are ready for and what's going to really work to deepen their relationship with the championships.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's like, how can it be a meaningful addition? And I think we can get caught up as an industry of, we're in our own bubbles, we're listening to all these things, things do sound great, but really, like, what does the fan want? And if it's not what they want, then it's kind of like you say, just a shiny new toy that is an add-on, but maybe people won't use it, or even it detracts away from, the part of an experience that they've liked in the past. So maybe we can look at, because everyone knows Wimbledon for a couple of weeks over the year, where you have everyone's eyeballs. But obviously, if you're bringing in new innovations to the championship, these things take time.
Yeah.
So maybe we could look at, I guess, how you are interacting with your global audience year round, and obviously there's a number of different majors across the year that you guys interact with on a yearly basis as well. But then be looking at, I guess, what that process looks like from, this is something that we think we might want to do, and maybe it comes after, the championship, where you sit down as a team and say, we think we could have done X, Y, and Z better, or here's something that we want to try for next year. So then from idea all the way through to, trialing and testing to then rolling out, would love to kind of get in your brain a little bit around what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the year-round element, so there are definitely elements of our business that are year-round, right? People can come and experience our amazing museum and come on tours at any point during the year. We've got our amazing Wimbledon collection from a retail perspective, and from a ticketing perspective, obviously the ballot is one of the most famous ticketing processes in the world, and that starts in September of each year and runs all the way through to the championships. And in addition to that, we've got all of our kind of, for the local community, we've got our amazing community facilities that we run both in Roehampton and in Rains Park, our foundation that's giving massive amounts of money to good causes locally, nationally, and around the world. So all of those bits of the business are running year round, as well as the fact that we are a functioning members tennis club. And so obviously that comes with running those operations all year round as well. So there's lots of bits of our business that are kind of always on. I think when it comes to engagement year round, I think the most important thing for us is that we're doing that with a degree of authenticity, because in particular nowadays, people can see through if you're doing anything really on any channel that doesn't have that authenticity. So yeah, we've got to work very closely with our colleagues in the Grand Slams, and we do work very, very closely with them on making sure that we're amplifying their moments, and as well as them supporting us. We do a lot around the grass court season. Grass court tennis is extremely important to us, unsurprisingly. Mm-hmm. The players only have 3 weeks on the grass to get ready for Wimbledon, and that's an extremely important part of our identity, is grass court tennis. So, we need to make sure that we're working with them and we're amplifying those moments as well. But equally, that we need to make sure that when we're doing that, we're very mindful of the fact that we're trying to do that where we have genuine relevancy and where the audience wants to hear about us, and that's extremely important. There's no point in just engagement farming for numbers for the sake of it, unless it's really adding something to someone's relationship with Wimbledon. So I think that's really really important. In terms of that year-round process, I'd actually say it goes kind of beyond that. Because it's a multi-year process. And actually, a lot of the things that we're talking about, I mentioned some of the big infrastructure changes that we're making this year. We started talking about those over 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago now. And actually, we were talking about those even during the championships last year and the year before, to make sure that we were progressing to be able to deliver. So we're actually moving more and more to a year-round delivery model, rather than just having this kind of very kind of stage process where you deliver a championships, you sit back. Obviously, you take a little bit of time off because it's amazing, but it's also quite tiring. And then by the time you get up and ready to go, you start thinking about next year. All of a sudden, you've actually only got 3 or 4 months to develop things before you're ready to go into testing and then get ready for next year. So we're definitely moving to more of this kind of overall year-round, a multi-year operating cycle. But we do have this amazing opportunity each year to gather insight and data to make sure that what we're planning is relevant, and that might well change our plans for the year ahead. So that includes all of the things you'd expect, like the data gathering, both from our own platforms and our own engagement, but also through to, kind of higher level polling data, looking at individual kind of user research sessions and all of the structured things that you'd expect from any kind of modern product organization, that then feed into the designs for what we're working on for the year after. And then the other element of that as well is that we don't want to get to the championships and to have been working on stuff that we've not put in front of people. So we're also making sure that as we're prototyping, we're doing user research, we're doing testing to make sure that what we thought was the way that people would want to use these things and what we thought was the design was going to work actually is going to work. So it's a big process. I'm glad that you didn't just jump straight in and ask what I'm doing for the other 50 weeks of the year, which is a question that sometimes we do get, because there's definitely plenty to be done, and I talk about that from my world, but that's also true across the board. It's phenomenal seeing the site the week after Wimbledon and how quickly it's switched and it's into the next cycle, right? We've got big capital projects that start up like literally kind of weeks after, and they run over multiple years. So like the Millennium building we're working on at the moment, which is going to offer amazing player facilities, full refurbishment of that building, stuff for the media as well. Like it's going to be amazing. That's been a 3-year project that they pick up each year. They work on it for 9-10 months. They then hand it back, make it all pristine, so it's beautiful. You wouldn't even know that anything's going on during the championships, and then they pick it up again the week after. So it's very, very similar in terms of like what we're doing, and it's the same thing. The effort that needs to go into a grass court, for instance, get it to Wimbledon standard, and how quickly that team, the grounds team, needs to pick up on it. It's just phenomenal to see. And it's actually quite amazing working on site at Wimbledon, because you see that and actually you think like, oh yeah, like that's like that is kind of the physical manifestation of what we're doing in the same way in the digital. So yeah, it is quite amazing.
Can we talk around that physical and digital crossover? Because I guess, some people will turn up and it's just a physical experience that they're there for. But obviously, that we've just talked around, there's a year-round touch points with many, many people. From your thinking, is the digital always around enhancing those couple of weeks where people are there, or how are you helping to use digital to drive people to the physical experience? And is those couple of weeks still the main kind of driver for all the bits that you're doing?
So obviously, the two things need to come hand in hand, and naturally we're going to get the most engagement during the championships. So that kind of does have to be a big element of our key focus, but also we want to make sure that we're supporting the physical experience. So, when we were reimagining what our digital products could look like in the future, and the reason behind some of the investment is about not just the experience for people at home and around the world, and making sure that we're delivering something which is relevant to them, and making sure that it's something which, as soon as they pick it up, feels relevant to them. But it's also around how we can use digital to support that in-person experience. And when we first started that, we started from journey mapping, looking at the potential future of how digital can enhance the experience for all manner of different guests and different users. So yeah, that's people that are attending, and people that are attending are definitely not one homogenous group, because the people that are attending Wimbledon have very, very different experiences. You've got people that are paying thousands and thousands of pounds for hospitality, some flying in across the world for this bucket list experience, and others they're getting a bucket list experience by turning up at 6 p.m. the night before and camping out to come in on what is probably the best value sports ticket, I think, in certainly the UK, possibly one of the best in the world. And those experiences are very, very different, and we've got to find ways to be able to support those effectively. But actually, it's the combination of that amazing in-person experience and the digital experience, I think, that really enhances the overall brand and the overall look and feel. And you can't separate the two. Like, if you look at, for instance, our social channels and our digital channels during the championships, you won't just find tennis there, right? Like, you'll find the holistic kind of experience of Wimbledon. We try and make sure that, the amazing horticulture that you experience if you come onto the grounds, which is like, it's quite breathtaking as you're walking around and you're seeing people experience it for the first time, just the beauty of being on the grounds. We need to make sure that people that are at home can experience that. And we need to make sure that they're getting all of those different elements of Wimbledon. And so, some of that, comes through our communications, for instance. Last year, some days, the most engaged thing in the emails we sent out was the Royal Box roll call, right? So it's not always just about the tennis. For different cohorts and different groups, they're interested in very different elements of Wimbledon. At the core, it is still the tennis. Like, we are striving to make sure that we're at the pinnacle of sport, and certainly at the pinnacle of tennis, and that is the most important, making sure that we're showcasing the players. But equally, Wimbledon is about more than just that. And I think that's kind of one of the things that makes us special, is that we take the time as well to make sure that we are investing in that and going above and beyond.
I want to get back to something that you said and touched on. I think it's so important for people to appreciate when you talk about the best value ticket. I think it's so important for people to appreciate that Wimbledon is an accessible event for people. Obviously, it's premium. You talk about Royal Box, and there's a premium element to Wimbledon. But for people who live in London, you can go to Wimbledon and you can get in at very low cost. You can experience tennis all over the club, sometimes, and see top players. And it's an incredible experience that's accessible to people. So there must be internally a real commitment to preserving that, and not saying we could charge an arm and a leg to everyone. We could sell this place out. We could go to dynamic pricing for our tickets, and that would be the direction. So there obviously is a commitment to keeping it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes back to part of our core identity, right? Ultimately, we are a members club. So, we're not a for-profit that's owned by private equity. We make a surplus, but we donate that surplus to the LTA to support tennis in this country. And that is something I think that kind of sets us apart, because that also enables us to make sure that we're putting the long-term thinking into making sure that we're very conscious about those decisions that we make. And yeah, we could definitely charge more for our tickets. You look at the scale of demand that we see through the ballot, and that shows you, right, that we are pricing our tickets to make sure that it's at a level that people can access. And we make sure that, the grounds passes on day one, for instance, are just phenomenal value, right? You can turn up Well, you have to turn up quite early. Sometimes camp overnight now, but you can turn up on the day effectively and walk in, and for a relatively small sum, you can see world-class tennis from 11 a.m. until the close of play across a phenomenal number of courts, and you can get so close to the action. Now, that experience, I don't think there's anyone really that could come and experience that and go away going, I've not had amazing value for money from this day. And that is extremely important, because I think that comes down to the overall accessibility, because that just strengthens us overall, like, and the value of Wimbledon, because those people go away and they talk about their experience. They talk about how phenomenal it was, and that is a big part of what makes Wimbledon special. And it's not just that either. I think it's also the effort that goes into, you know, putting that out through our digital channels, through social, but also through broadcast, like especially in the UK, where, you know, we've been on free to air for such a long period of time, and then again that generates this thing which, you know, it means that we can be that kind of unifying presence as well, because no matter who you are, you can enjoy Wimbledon, and that's something which there's not very many things in the world nowadays that you can say that about. So yeah, it's definitely something that's really, really important to us. But I think that comes back to that kind of longer term thinking and making sure that we're making those conscious decisions to make sure that we are building and giving that experience to as broad a group as possible.
There's the accessibility piece, and then being able to personalize the experience to everyone that wants to turn up, that you just touched on. I guess for you guys, there's the broadcast partners that you've been working with for years. I guess everyone's big sports industry thing recently is, how do you own that fan relationship more and more? You know, that gives you more data, that means you can personalize those experiences further and further. How are you finding that balance between obviously a long-standing relationship with broadcast partners versus, I guess, your own digital products? And I guess wanting to, you know more around what your audience are doing and how they're engaging. So
I don't think necessarily the two things need to compete, and I think that's the key thing. I think ultimately, if we can have a direct relationship with people and we can deepen their interest in the championships, that's going to get more eyes on our broadcasters, and that is a positive thing. More eyes on our broadcasters for more hours as well, right? If we can start to build more interest in a broader range of players, in making sure that those kind of key moments and the key stories throughout the championships are told, so that whoever arrives at the final, people know more about them and who they are, then that's actually going to enhance things for our broadcasters. We work very, very closely with our broadcasters, especially from a marketing team perspective. There's a few examples of that. So, especially with the BBC in the UK. So last year, for instance, we worked with the BBC on combining our Roblox experiences. So last year, we integrated Doctor Who into Wimbledon Tennis Showdown on Roblox. And we had a Wimbledon element in their experience as well. And that just shows the strength of those brands and those organisations being able to come together to be able to produce something great. And also on that as well, with the BBC, we're working on two kind of big bits of innovation for this year. So one of those is actually going to be hosted both on our digital platforms, and it's going to be hosted on BBC's platforms, which is working with BBC R&D and the BBC Signals team to be able to offer an interactive feed of Wimbledon. So it will be in the UK only on centre court, but that will be enhanced with data that you can manipulate, and you can do it whilst watching the broadcast and as part of the broadcast. And it will also offer engagement units, so interactive quizzes, polls, other things like that, to be able to engage with people whilst they're watching the championships. So I think that's a very good example of somewhere where, you know, it's not necessarily an either or, but actually you can come together, especially when you've got the long-standing partnerships and long-standing trust that comes with that, to be able to produce amazing experiences which actually work for both broadcasters and for us in terms of building those direct relationships. And actually, I think that's something that when you get into the depth of it, that a lot of broadcasters they want, right? Because they want you to be successful, and they want you to be able to build those relationships and to be able to, you know, make sure that people are deepening their engagement with you. And they understand as well that there are some things that we should be doing best, right? If you come onto our app and website and our scores functionality is not the best, then something has gone wrong. And so actually, yeah, they don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. They can fit really, really nicely together.
Maybe we can talk around the storytelling piece that you brought up as well, because obviously people have an expectation of if they switch on the BBC to watch the championships, they kind of know what they're going to get. I guess there are other stories that people want to get, and getting that behind the scenes of, you know, what the players are doing, you know, how the championship has come to be. We were talking about the grass and whatever else is coming up, right? But I guess, you know, you're using different platforms to tell those different stories as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, our social team have done a phenomenal job. I don't think.
I forget what the number was last year, but there was an incredible number of posts that went out last year.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was, but like it's staggering.
Yeah, and I lose count of the number of billions of impressions that we end up on. And yeah, Will Cameron and the team do an absolutely phenomenal job of leading that area. And I think one of the main reasons is because they do that phenomenal job of being able to translate what makes Wimbledon special around that overall storytelling and some of those kind of unique elements that really, you know, that really resonate with people, but they do it in a way which is relevant to each of those platforms. And there's a lot more in the strategy that sits behind that. I won't try and sum that up, but ultimately, yeah, they do such a good job of making sure that it's relevant to that platform and that it's giving that flavor of Wimbledon that just hits the tone perfectly. And it is one of those things as well that you kind of just, I don't think you could codify it, because actually it's one of those things that just comes with working at Wimbledon. Like, yes, like we do have a brand portal and we have brand guidelines and we have a creative team that does a phenomenal job of being able to turn that into amazing creative assets. But ultimately, like there is something that's unwritten about Wimbledon. And just working here and experiencing it, you start to kind of understand what that is, and then you know, you find phenomenal experts in those individual areas around the storytelling, whether that is our broadcasters or it's our social team or it's our kind of broader content team, to be able to make sure that you're hitting both notes, that it does resonate with that audience, but equally that it honors our heritage, and that's extremely important.
I guess from a technology perspective, you are trying to enable those teams to do what they can do in the quickest way possible, but, you know, being able to, like you say, honor that feeling around Wimbledon, you know, without detracting from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's 100%. Is you're trying to enable the stories to be told effectively, and make sure that we're doing enough to be able to kind of pull back. So like where we've got kind of core features functionality, we're doing enough to be able to pull that back in, so it's not just a score line, but actually we can start to do some of that storytelling. And some of the times we can try and do that through the functionality, like I was mentioning about that kind of live, like to win key moments, to be able to tell some of that. But equally, ultimately, you know, what makes sport so amazing is its humanity. And so therefore it's extremely important that we are raising that storytelling up, and we're trying to make sure that they have the platform to be able to tell those stories effectively.
You have the long-term commercial partners. You mentioned that you have partners that have been with you for many years, but Wimbledon has an image and very much has a feel of being quite what they used to say, a clean venue, and a event that it doesn't have billboards and brands plastered all over the place. I'm sure there's always a tension from partners to get their message out and to get their exposure out to the max. How do you walk that tightrope?
So I don't think I necessarily would call it a tension necessarily. Like, obviously there'll always be points where commercial partners will have certain things they want, and we need to have those discussions. But equally, I think when you partner with Wimbledon, you're partnering with Wimbledon because it's Wimbledon. And actually, there are lots of different elements that make up Wimbledon, and we're very selective about which commercial partners we bring on board because we want brands that have that natural alignment. And so I don't think there's many brands that we would bring in who would be making asks for the backboards to be flashing with their logo at the end of every point, because actually I think they've got enough of an understanding of what makes Wimbledon special, and they want to hack into kind of what makes Wimbledon special to make sure that actually they're building on it and that they're not competing against it. I mean, our commercial partners are extremely important. You look at our activity in gaming, for instance, eChamps last year, we might come on to talk about some of the other stuff we're doing this year that we've delivered, that's been presented by American Express. And we've got very key elements that are in that partnership, that are core to that partnership, which are all about kind of innovating and finding new audiences and engaging with new audiences in a way which is suitable for Wimbledon. But then obviously the American Express partnership forms part of that, and they are again like absolutely amazing at understanding that and at knowing that there are certain things that Wimbledon wouldn't do, but there are things that we can and do, and ultimately that always comes back to that blend of the heritage and making sure that we understand who we are, but also making sure that we are focusing on innovating and moving Wimbledon forwards and making sure that it's relevant to the time. Because actually a lot of the things that people think of about Wimbledon that are part of our core identity, you know, they wouldn't have been there 149 years ago. They're all things that have happened at some point. They're all innovations which have come in, and Wimbledon has done this amazing job, I think, of moving with the times. And we're extremely fortunate, you know, when I started, you know, here 4 years ago, that I was inheriting 145 years of innovation effectively, and of building that to make sure that we're relevant to today's society effectively. And I think the commercial partners understand that, and they understand that we want to move, but also that actually, you know, there are core elements that make Wimbledon special, and they kind of want to be part of that in a way.
Maybe we can touch on the game side of stuff, because I guess there are different ways for partners to activate within those spaces versus the physical kind of ways to activate as well. So maybe we can take a step back and look at your games portfolio, because it's quite broad ranging, and you've been kind of looking after that for the last couple of years as well. So we'd love to maybe touch on obviously the Roblox stuff that you've been doing. But then you've just brought up a couple more as well. So maybe we can look at, you know, how you're thinking about all those individual platforms and products. And I guess, you know, what the broader kind of gaming strategy is at Wimbledon. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people think of, a lot of people that aren't close, probably most people listening to this podcast don't, but a lot of people who aren't familiar with the gaming industry look at it as one kind of block and one thing, which obviously everyone who's involved with it fundamentally knows that it's not. And so I think our overall strategy and portfolio is built around making sure that we have an understanding of that. And also, I think a key part of that is that we make sure that we understand where we can't know the detail of a certain area, that we work with the leading experts in that area to make sure that what we're doing is relevant to that audience. In the same way that I mentioned that we do that on different social platforms, you need to make sure that you're doing that on different gaming platforms. And there's some things that, you know, wouldn't necessarily be part of our brand if we were going to put it on Centre Court, but actually they are part of what we do when it comes to gaming. So this year we've got our experience in Roblox, which we're building on. So this is the first year that we've done integration into other Roblox experiences as well, which is really exciting. But I think when we were looking at that and we're looking at how we approach that, we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing that in a transactional way. So what we've decided to do is build a bit of a storytelling narrative around some of our integrations. So the narrative, big hit last year was Pip the Strawberry. You might have seen Pip the Strawberry. It's a little kind of plushy toy. all it was on the BBC desk was the one item that you just couldn't get out the shops, and all the players were desperate to get a Pip. So we're taking Pip and we're bringing Pip to Roblox across 3 different experiences. And effectively, what's happened is that we're 3 weeks out from the championships, and Pip's gone missing. And we have to effectively go on a series of quests to save the day and allow the championships to happen by saving Pip. So we're doing it, but we're doing it in our own kind of Wimbledon way. And then that accumulates in elements that will be in Wimbledon Tennis Showdown. So we're not just doing brand integrations, but we're also trying to make sure that we're linking that back to Wimbledon Tennis Showdown, where we think we can offer people the most holistic kind of experience of Wimbledon, of the championships, that allows us to build some of the things which I think a lot of us that grew up watching on terrestrial TV in the UK, Wimbledon, and so take for granted about Wimbledon and what it is, the grass, the strawberries, and lots of things you've already mentioned, that we're making sure that we're putting those things in front of those kind of newer and younger audiences. And so, yeah, we feel like that's done best through our own experience, but equally we want to make sure that we're reaching out and engaging with people where they're spending their time, and a lot of that will be in other experiences as well. It's
a really interesting point before we continue, that you're saying people that grew up with Wimbledon watching it on television, it's on grass, about the strawberries and cream, it's different. But new generations and younger people, you have to put it before them what it is and kind of explain or take them on that journey of saying showing that Wimbledon is different from the other events. And I guess that this strawberry relates directly to that.
Yeah, exactly. So making sure that, we're starting to weave those kind of bits of magic associated with Wimbledon into kind of those different touch points with those different audiences, to make sure that they have that awareness. Because you just don't have the same communal viewing moments that you used to, and it used to be something that was much easier than it is now, because every kid's on their own device, and therefore that means that their experience is going to be different, and we have to make sure that we're showing up in a way that's relevant to them. But equally, we need to make sure that we're weaving that magic of Wimbledon in a relevant way. So, yeah.
I mean, just on that same theme, the thing about Wimbledon, you talk about watching it on TV, you knew as soon as it came up, it was green. It was on grass. It's Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that for people that have not seen that and don't necessarily have that connection, you'd say, well, Wimbledon's played on grass. They go, really?
Yeah. So an example of that, for instance, one of the elements of Wimbledon Tennis Showdown is that we've got a mini game around preparing the courts. Mowing the grass, painting the lines, because actually that craft that goes into it and that extra effort that goes into creating a grass court is an extremely important part of our identity, because it's not just about the fact that it's on grass, it is about the grass and the effort that goes into it and that phenomenal living playing surface that we have. So, when we were doing that, we worked with the grounds team to try and make sure that the mowers reflected different lawn mowers over history, depending on what time, what level you were at, and all of those sorts of things, to make sure that we are pulling on those kind of magic strings and kind of starting to seed some of that stuff into those younger audiences. And it's one of those things that's hard, because you obviously, you can look at the engagement figures, but some of it isn't tangible, and some of it is things that you're making an investment that actually you might not see come to fruition for another 10 or 15 or 20 years, when people have an affinity to those things and they have an affinity to Wimbledon and to the championships. So I think, again, that's one of the unique things about our position as Wimbledon, is that, yes, like we do have commercial elements, and we do have commercial partnerships, etc., but also we can think a little bit longer term than some other organizations can.
I guess, like you say, people's entry points, or like the first point of discovery of Wimbledon, isn't necessarily through broadcast anymore. It is through socials, or it's through games. Like, how important was your thinking around, like, the experience and can we call Pip a mascot of sorts, or is that going too far? Is it going too far? But I guess
not formal mascot.
But I guess people are engaging because it's entertainment to some degree, and it's not necessarily like you've got a product that's for sim games, and it's looking at the ways that people, as you've talked around, are interacting or engaging or finding the connection point that is outside of just the tennis. And I guess, Wimbledon as a brand is so much bigger than just the tennis as well. And I'm intrigued how you're thinking about bringing that kind of side of the story into the stuff that you're doing across games as well.
Yeah, so I think the Pit one is a good example. So we're also launching a map in Fortnite as well this year. Again, one that we're partnering with American Express on, and that'll be a kind of Wimbledon Up is the kind of format, which is probably a familiar format for a few of your listeners. And again, we've tried to make sure that we're weaving those core elements of our brand and our identity into that in a way which is exciting and relevant. And I think in those UGC platforms it's slightly easier to do. Yeah. I think you have to be a bit more conscious about it when you're thinking about some of the other elements. So we're always very careful. For instance, we're running eChamps again this year, and we're running that on Tennis Clash, which is the biggest kind of mobile tennis game. And obviously, mobile gaming, the engagement numbers are actually absolutely massive. Yeah. I think people take that for granted a lot, or don't quite realise. But we make sure that where that's the case, that we've got the good representation of the courts and of the grounds, that the players are in white. And that sets us apart from some of the other kind of tournaments that people might play in, and that we're starting to pull on some of those strings and working hard with those kind of the producers of the games to make sure that they are representing Wimbledon in the proper light, and even down to console gaming. So we're working with Tiebreak, and we're trying to make sure that the scoreboards reflect the scoreboards that you see on TV, because actually, we start to weave some more elements of our brand and the premium feel of it into those, so that we make sure that there is that kind of differentiation, and they can see that Wimbledon is kind of special and different. So I think that's definitely really, really important, but it needs to be relevant to that individual platform and the way in which you're doing it. So like I said, yes, there are lots of flowers in Wimbledon Tennis Showdown on Roblox. There's lots of horticulture. Does it look exactly like it would on the grounds? No, it's not, right? It needs to be more gamified. We need to push the brand a little bit more in those instances.
Maybe we can come back to one of the pieces that you said around, obviously you're in a fortunate position where you can look a little bit longer term. And I guess when we're talking about seeding fandom and bringing in the next generation, it is hard because that youth audience doesn't necessarily have the purchasing power that a older generation does. So I'm intrigued, obviously you've been part of the games ecosystem for a while now, and obviously at some point you had to go internally and try and educate on why it should be somewhere that Wimbledon should be showing up. I'm intrigued, there's obviously a lot of people that would be listening that are going through that same kind of conversation. So if we're not talking about immediate ROI on these kind of things, what's the success kind of look like for Wimbledon in these spaces, and I guess what can others learn from that?
I think a lot of it is about being upfront about what you are and are not trying to achieve when you go into some of these spaces. And I think it is different for every organisation. And actually it's funny because I've spoke to some sports organisations, especially some of the smaller ones, where they've been approached by Roblox development studios or whatever. And there's some where I've said, actually, my personal opinion is, if you're going to do this, you either need to work with other partners in your sport, or you need to find a different way of doing it, because the approach that we've taken isn't necessarily going to work with you. And that comes back a lot to what we've been saying earlier, right? It's not about just doing it for the sake of doing it. It's about doing it because you're trying to drive something meaningful. And there are lots of different elements that form part of that picture. I think actually at Wimbledon, we've got quite a good awareness from our kind of board and committee around some of those longer term elements and longer term growth. And I think we've done a good job of trying to make sure that they're fairly well informed. And actually on some of this stuff, actually, they start pushing because they know that it's something that's important, and they know that there's this massive volume of engagement. They know that media is changing, and so therefore they're actually keen for ideas of how we can go about doing some of this stuff. In terms of the strict kind of investment case, I think the engagement numbers are one key element of it. And we're over 30 million plays now on Wimbledon Tennis Showdown, which is a great number, but also making sure that people understand within the context of that billions of engagement number that actually it's a different type of engagement. It's deep, it's longer sessions, it's engagement with some of our kind of core elements of our brand, and being able to do that actually it is slightly different, and you are building a deeper engagement than you do in some other areas. Like not every number is equal, and I think we've got a kind of reasonably good understanding of that at Wimbledon. I think building that overall picture is extremely important, and comparing things like time spent, for instance, right? If you're comparing time spent, then you're going to end up with a more favorable comparison in gaming than if you're just comparing overall reach or user numbers. So making sure that you've built out a structured enough case around what that means for the shorter term and the longer term is, I think, quite important. But obviously, that'll vary massively depending on each individual setup and where people are. And it might be for some, it's not the case for us, but it might be for some, it's actually a commercial rights inventory type conversation, obviously making sure you've got all of the right safeguards in place, and we make sure we've got all of that in place where we do integrate our partners into these things.
Really cool. No, I agree. I think sports is excruciatingly commercial sometimes and very immediate in terms of what they want to achieve. But I think in such a loud and competitive media landscape now where people have got so many options, you have to be front and center. And I think that it's the only way that you're going to build some kind of connection that then hopefully goes on to a fandom as well. So I think that there's the strategy that you guys have is the right one.
Yeah. And there are a lot of brands, I think, generally, like listening to your podcast, that understand that as well, right? Like they understand that there's a depth of engagement and there's a quality to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the harder thing to make sure that you're putting across effectively, especially, we all work in, quite rightly so, in data-led environments. And obviously everything we're doing, we are tracking, but it's making sure that we're tracking not just the headlines, but we're tracking what that means and what the impact of it is. And, ultimately there are lots of things you can do. You can do brand surveys, pre and post. You can do all those sorts of activities and things to make sure that you're showing that depth of value that you're driving. Because within a gaming environment, if you're comparing strict purchasing metrics, you're probably not going to win the case. So you've got to make it more structured and more nuanced than that.
Let's maybe look into the crystal ball a little bit and see, 5 years down the line for Wimbledon, and I guess this innovation and gaming journey that you guys are on. Like, what do you think that looks like, or what's your hope that it looks like in 5 years' time? Obviously, you were talking about a lot of the infrastructure that you've put in place now will hopefully power a lot of those experiences. But if you were to hang your hat on something, like what would you love it to look like?
So I think, 5 years is a long time, so I can be ambitious.
Call it two.
I think the one of the main things for me is like I've said, it'll always be about marrying up that heritage with innovation. So a lot of the key elements that we talk about will still remain the same. But I think where I'd like to get to, certainly in terms of our owned platforms, is a position where we can offer a unique experience to different, not necessarily to every individual, because I don't really like talking about personalization because it's this kind of very, exactly. It's just a term that doesn't really mean anything. But where we get to a point where if you land on our platforms, provided you give us the right consents, we can learn about you quickly enough to be able to make sure your experience is relevant to you.
Yeah.
I think that's the key thing. And that, I think you see lots of different organizations that are doing this. But at the moment, a lot of them are doing that by adding features into experiences rather than just trying to straight up curate an experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when we've got that very limited time window, that's one of the reasons we put the effort into the infrastructure, is because we need to learn about people very, very quickly to then be able to use, your dynamic AI targeting, etc., to be able to deliver the things that are relevant to them. Because that is a very different experience if you are in the US, right, in your West Coast US, and you're waking up and we're 3 hours into the play for the day, in comparison to if you're in Japan and you're waking up and there's no play happening for another 8 hours, but you've got a whole day worth to catch up on, right? So I think where we'd like to get to is to be able to understand those different audiences and be able to have something which is scalable and which we can automate to be able to deliver that kind of unique experience. Well, not necessarily unique, but that relevant experience to each different.
It's almost like I hate to say, but it's almost like a Netflix experience where it comes up and it, they're not perfect, but it gives you an opportunity to see, what things you might want to watch that are relevant to you.
Yeah,
curation is what you use, as opposed to just cluttering. So often you go on and it just gives you more to sift through, as opposed to saying, okay, well, these are things I'm actually interested in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the unique thing about Wimbledon is that we've got such, obviously we've kind of got all of our segmentation. We've got such diverse audiences, from your tennis lover who's watching matches on the ATP, WTA tours every week in, week out, through to your social fans who are actually mostly interested in the social elements of it. They might be more interested in the celebrity, royal box, etc. And so whilst at the moment we've got some elements of that, right? You can select your favorite players, you get served up relevant content related to them. We've got stories and some of the dynamics within that capable of being able to make that a bit more personalized, really being able to get down to the depth of understanding of, actually, this person is this type of fan, and so therefore we need to serve up that type of experience, is really, really important. We do some of it at the moment, but it's very, very hard, which I think is why very few organizations do it effectively. It's very hard to do that at scale, especially when you're talking about such an intense event. And so that's why you need to make sure that in the background you've got the best tools available to make sure that you are being able to do that dynamic.
I mean, the technology to be able to do it. There's it's so demanding.
Yeah, exactly. And that's some of the stuff that, I mean, you won't hear many people coming on your podcast to talk about that, but it is fundamentally necessary to be able to deliver the experience.
It's not necessarily the sexy part of it, but it's the realistic part of being able to deliver those experiences, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
No, cool. Chris, we could talk for hours more, but you've got the championships coming up. So thank you so much for joining, Jay. Thanks for quizzing as well.
Very much.
Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you for the next one.